Right now we are going to review the documentation prepared by security officers. In addition, we will examine the collection, preservation and access to evidence. There may be several types of documentation required on your job assignments. The forms and how they are prepared may vary among different security agencies, or they may be the work product of your client. The most common for security personnel are incident reports and daily logs. How documentation is provided and submitted may be different as well. While most are provided in an electronic format, there may be situations where some or all documentation is still handwritten. Incident reports are common in several industries and normally the first written account of all known details. They are normally required when an out-of-the-ordinary event occurs, such as an accident, a crime, a medical assist, etc. Some job assignments may prepare incident reports frequently, while other properties may have only an occasional need. You will come to understand these patterns when starting assignments at different properties and with different clients. Daily logs are an account of a security officer's shift activity. They normally document patrol functions, specific times when tasks are performed, areas or items are checked, and all normal and abnormal shift information. Logs are important as they account for what security officers observed and what actions they took. Absent nothing new where a patrol is normal is equally as important to document. These recordings allow for an accurate and verifiable record of activities. While they can seem routine and repetitive, they should be completed regardless. Security officers must have a method available to record notes when they are out in the field. These notes will be used as a reference when completing an incident report. Notebooks are the most common method for jotting down pertinent information. An electronic method can be useful as well. Officers should understand these notes technically remain the property of their employer and may need to be made available for review in the future. Field notes can be details such as names, contact numbers, etc. Obtaining accurate spellings and current numbers is important. When jotting down information from a victim, a witness, or some person involved, reviewing their government or other issued identification may be helpful. People may be hesitant to give their ID to security and they are not legally compelled to do so. A police officer can demand someone produce ID for their lawful purposes. Do your best if you cannot review an ID, and if a person refuses to provide information, document this in your incident report as well. Documentation is used for a contemporary account and review, but also a source often used later on by persons investigating the incident, and certainly for evidence in criminal and civil legal proceedings. Security personnel will account for their time worked in different formats used by security agencies. This could be an old-fashioned time clock, a written sign-in log, or through a phone or electronic means. Verification of security work periods is important for payroll purposes, in other words, your paycheck. Clients often audit such records as they are paying an hourly bill rate for all security hours worked. These records can also be used in legal proceedings such as a lawsuit alleging lack of security or a variety of issues. While incident report formats vary, most contain two essential components: a detail section and a narrative section. The detail section will normally provide some or all of these. These details may be information regarding victims, offenders, officers, or agencies who responded, witnesses, property involved, vehicles involved, etc. This is often how details are arranged in the detail section of an incident report, but consult and utilize what might be required on your individual job assignment. The narrative section of an incident report is where you will in essence tell the story of your response as you know it factually. A well-written narrative is properly organized and follows a certain template summarizing all aspects of the incident. This template can vary and often allows the report writer to develop their own. Narratives seldom come naturally and require some time and effort, but when written well are an invaluable resource for your company and client. If you are unfamiliar with the task or have minimal experience in report writing, your client or agency should be able to provide some more in-depth training. It should be part of initial on-the-job training regardless. Clients and agencies should understand the value of well-documented incidents. Even so, one tip for writing a good narrative is to review well-written versions from a colleague or a supervisor should they be okay with it. As mentioned, your report may be relied upon in the future. You should also consider who will be examining and scrutinizing it. Certainly supervisors will review it initially, but later on an attorney, judge, jury and others may have it in front of them. You also want to write a report for persons who do not know or understand your property and may have never even visited it. This is where specifics are important. The document you have written may need to speak for you one day in your absence. Perhaps you will change jobs or not be present at a legal proceeding. While your individual report writing style will vary, you will want to understand some basics. First, remember you are preparing a professional document. If you might be preparing a handwritten report, doing your best to have neat penmanship will be appreciated by those reading it. Spelling and grammar can be checked using common report writing software or Word documents. If handwritten, a smartphone can be your dictionary, punctuation, and other reference. A narrative must contain only relevant and factual information. It is inappropriate to include your opinions or personal overview of an incident. For example, if you believe a person suffered a slip and fall accident because there was not enough housekeeping personnel on duty, that is conjecture and should not be included in your report. Write your report as soon as possible after responding to the incident and you have all of your information. It is human nature to forget or even misremember information after time lapses. Take notes when interviewing persons involved. Witness statements are particularly important. Any information obtained or contained in any work-related document must remain confidential. You may be privy to individuals' personal information and you are responsible to disclose it only as necessary to appropriate parties attached to your organization. Most report writing styles should encompass the 5 C's. First, the report should be understandable and get to the point while not sparing necessary details. It should not ramble on, repeat itself or lack information. Read the narrative and make sure the flow of it makes sense. While some report writers can summarize their content in a few paragraphs, others may find themselves providing a more expanded version. Your goal is to include all relevant details no matter the length of the narrative. Leave out filler words as this is a written document, not a conversation. The only exceptions would be when you are quoting someone. Run-on sentences will distract and confuse the reader. Remember to generally have one statement per sentence. Stick with one writing style and generally use first or third person pronouns throughout your narrative. The same goes for verb tenses, past, present, or future. Decide on one tense and continue to use it consistently. Most incident narratives would be written in the past tense as the actions have already occurred. You can use abbreviations to cut down on the wording, but still allow the reader to understand your reference. Abbreviations should be fully written out during their first insertion in the narrative, followed by the abbreviation placed in parenthesis, then going forward it can be used as needed. For example, write out Delaware State Police followed by DSP in parenthesis, then it can be DSP going forward. Be consistent when referring to and identifying persons in your report. Choose one reference for a person and use it throughout the narrative. For example, don't refer to someone as a victim in paragraph 1, then reporting person in paragraph 2, then a complainant in paragraph 3. If you choose to identify a person by their name, write the name out fully the first time, then you can use their last name going forward. Including a date of birth is always a good immediate reference of understanding for a reader. You want your report to be convincing, but not in a manner where you are being dramatic. You are writing a report, not a suspense-filled novel. Your report is the initial overview of the incident. The time for speculation is later, and normally the job of an investigator. Again, your speculation about what occurred is conjecture. If the facts as they are reported to you change at a later time, a follow-up addendum might be appropriate, but always keep the initial account on the record. Oftentimes actual events turn out differently from when they are fully investigated versus what is initially reported. People are often inaccurate about their initial reporting, and not always on purpose. Trauma can confuse someone, or perhaps they may be willfully trying to be deceitful. An adage about crisis management and initial reports is normally the first 3 accounts of an incident are inaccurate. Regardless, you must initially report what you know at the time. It should go without saying that spelling and grammar must be checked. Normally, electronic reports have spell check or even grammar checks, but if handwritten, be careful. Remember, a smartphone is an instant dictionary. Certain details are very important such as names, date of births, ages, and a contact number. Depending on the report format, these may be placed in a details section, a narrative, or both. When applying these 6 questions to ask, let's use an example of a slip and fall, a personal accident where a person has fallen and potentially injured themselves on a property where you are assigned. Asking what happened can be a very broad question. You want to fully understand the incident, and this normally requires a full review. Have the victim explain what happened when they fell, but equally as important might be what they were doing before they fell. For example, if someone were talking on their cell phone or chasing their children before falling, these are distractions they created and considered causative acts. In other words, their actions are somewhat or partially the reason for the accident. If someone had consumed alcohol or drugs before their accident, these can be contributing factors as well. Even if a victim indicates they were not paying attention or simply did not see the wet floor signs, are important details to note. There are times when it becomes obvious the accident occurred simply due to negligence on behalf of your client. Water or other liquids spilled on the floor would be considered a causative agent, a reason why the accident occurred. While the client oversees your agency contract and, in effect, pays your salary, you must be committed to providing a truthful and accurate account of the accident. You may also be called upon at a later time to legally testify during a deposition or other legal proceedings where you will be sworn to tell the truth. While it is not your job to change facts in favor of a client, you also should not go beyond simply providing the specific details as reported to you. You must attempt to define exactly where an incident or accident occurred. Provide as many details as possible to explain. Again, you are writing a narrative for someone who may not know anything about your property. Light pole numbers, directionals, east, west, north, south, near a particular store or landmark, etc. If possible, have a victim or reporting person show you the exact location. Pinpointing a location also allows for any video surveillance of the area to be reviewed for details. Often a writer needs to assume exact times when an accident happened. If the writer arrived a few minutes after, and the victim said they fell about 5 minutes ago, you have a general time frame. Again, matching any available video will give you an exact time-stamped answer. Victims sometimes delay reporting accidents as they do not feel they are injured or they are embarrassed. They may even leave the property and wait hours, a day, a week, or even longer. Have them explain why they delayed reporting and outline the same in your narrative. Finding out why an accident happened is an expansion upon what happened. Simply having the victim explain why they had their accident, in their opinion or based upon actual details. Why do you think you fell to the ground? Allow them to suggest a reason, or they may point to an obvious factor. They may indicate, there is water on the ground. While that may be true, and it is understandable that someone might not observe water on the ground, especially if they are not looking at the ground, as most people do not, the fact they were not paying attention to their walking pattern can be a contributing factor. This is why having a victim explain what they did before an accident till the point of when it occurred comes into play. People often want to begin their story at a point where it is most advantageous to them, in other words, the part where it makes them look like they share no blame in the matter. This is not to say people cannot be injured through no fault of their own, and you never want to blame someone for causing an injury to themselves, as nobody purposely wants to be the victim of an accident. Just make sure you are getting the whole story. Civil lawsuits are settled based upon a preponderance of evidence, in other words, how much they are at fault as opposed to the party they are suing, in this case your client. A jury, a judge, or an arbitrator must assign a percentage of responsibility for each side, which equates to how financially responsible a client may be liable. Hopefully you see why the details of your incident report really do matter. The how question comes down to the process of the accident. For example, if a victim claims they have an injury to their shoulder, it stands to reason they fell on their shoulder. Persons with pre-existing medical conditions can easily re-aggravate prior injuries as well. While you will not be able to fully inquire about a victim's medical history, victims often cite prior injuries which may also be contributing factors to their accident. If someone has a weak knee, this may heavily contribute to why they fell down. While outlining how someone might have suffered any claimed injury can be conjecture, and best left to an expert to investigate and explain, certain details will assist them. Indicating if a person reported falling forward or backward or to one side would logically explain a resulting body area injury. Again, you are looking to understand the process of the accident according to the victim or from a witness. Incident reports are vital documents prepared by security officers, but they are one of several evidentiary items they utilize. Let's take a look at some other tools and the methodology for doing so. Photographs of an accident or crime incident are evidence. The old saying, "A picture is worth 1,000 words," holds true. Photos literally illustrate many factors about an incident. Security officers should obtain this evidence as soon as possible. This means pictures taken before housekeeping is able to clean or clear the area, evidence is distorted or removed due to weather conditions, or anything else which might disturb evidence in its organic form. To ensure validity, photos should be electronically time and date stamped, which is normally possible with most devices. Security officers should use agency or client-provided cameras or smartphones to obtain digital pictures. If you have an immediate need to record such evidence on a personal device, understand all photos and videos on the device become legally discoverable. Take several different picture views and perspectives. If possible, track a walking pattern of a victim before they reach a spill. You can take more than one picture of a causative agent, but repeat photos serve little or no value. Consider adding an object to demonstrate size. For example, placing a pencil next to an item that caused a victim to trip will allow others a better perspective. Take aggravating and mitigating evidence photos. Aggravating evidence might be a liquid spilled on the ground or a raised portion of a rug a victim tripped over. Mitigating evidence might be a wet floor or caution sign which warned a victim about a hazard. Refrain from taking actual victim photos such as an injured or affected body part even if you have permission. Lastly, be aware, victims or others may take photos or video for their own evidentiary purposes. This should not be discouraged unless you are specifically directed by a client to stop this from happening. If you as a security guard are taking evidence photos for a vandalism or damage report, pay attention to details. Spray painting or graffiti may indicate gang markings or messages. Such evidence could possibly be reviewed by law enforcement intelligence sources such as the Dayak State Police Unit. Such markers may be precursors to potential criminal activity on your property. Offender details including clothing or vehicles involved in an incident coming from personal observations or from an eyewitness are also evidence. While such details might be outlined in an incident report, law enforcement may need them immediately for suspect broadcasts and other related reasons. Video surveillance is probably the most utilized evidence in the security industry. Camera views provide an indisputable view of an incident fully or partially. This type of evidence is an invaluable aid and should be examined to reference all non-routine incidents. Video allows security, law enforcement and others to see what actually happened, possibly without hearing or in comparison to what a victim or an offender's account might be. Security's role would normally be review and preservation of such evidence. A review should be extensive and include time periods before, during, and after an incident. Lack of video evidence is also evidence. If you have a person reporting a crime or accident at a certain time and location and there is no video, this would directly contradict their allegation, or conversely, confirm it if there is footage of what they allege. Depending on the surveillance system, video may need to be archived within a certain time period. Multiple copies of archived video should be preserved as single copies can be misplaced or defective. Also, the video may be required by several sources. Consider video being used in exigent circumstances. For example, video may confirm where an active shooter was, or is located. A description of a dangerous criminal not in custody may be viewed, or perhaps the identity of a prohibited offender who was previously trespassed. Always remember, video surveillance is the property of your client, if it exists on their property or was captured by their system. As a contract employee, you have no authority to release, promise or otherwise disseminate a client's property without their express knowledge and consent. Normally such policies will be established, but always make certain the client is aware and approves. This even includes releases to law enforcement. Subpoenas or other court-ordered demands for video or any evidence must also be forwarded to a client. For investigative purposes, consider other sources of video evidence. This might be footage from a tenant or a neighboring property. If such evidence might exist, it should be pursued. Clients may require written authorization forms or agreements to be completed or acknowledged by parties requesting copies of evidence. Again, attempt to understand all these policies in advance. Normally, legal demands for evidence would preclude this step as they are court orders. We will conclude on a precautionary note. As stated, evidence including video is client property. In an age of social media where videos and pics are shared constantly, remember unauthorized sharing of any such material is most certainly a violation of your company and client policies. While video and pics may be amusing, disturbing or otherwise whimsical, and can provoke a gratifying and immediate response, distributing them may come back to haunt you and your agency.